Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking you all for showing up and listening to me talk. This is kind of a compliment. I'd also like to thank John Watson for a lovely introduction. It makes me sound really good. I am a sculptor. I work with textiles and installation and some photography, so I more consider myself just an artist, depending on what I'm working with at the time. I am not going to begin at the beginning. I'm going to begin sort of where my most recent work started. So I'm going to sort of begin here. I am of the school of thought that sculpture is based in the monument. Monuments are the way we memorialize history or events and those things that become our myth of how we came to be. But being in that school of thought, I spend a lot of time pushing my own definition of what a monument is. I didn't go into graduate school thinking that I was going to go in there and work with time and place, and I'll talk more about time later. But it's like those things sort of snuck up on me. And they snuck up on me in a way where I started working with materials, and when I start to work with materials, I literally start to play with them. And I don't know if that's really the right way to phrase that. But I want to try something new, and I get the material and I start to experiment with it, and I have the voice in my head that I've had since I was little, and it says stuff like, I wonder what happens if I do this. So I start playing with things. And that's where these started. And this is one of the earliest chairs I made. The material is overbeaten abaca paper. And I had, after palimpsest, been working with paper because prior to that, I was using materials like latex to cast the surface texture of wood, which is beautiful, but latex stinks. It's foul. And even after the piece was cured, my artwork smelled like a doctor's office, and I didn't like that. So I wanted something that was less toxic and less stinky. And so I started working with a machine called a Hollander beater, which is awesome, but when you're learning how to do something new, I overbeat the paper, and this is what came out. But I really liked it. That sort of accident made a sheet of paper that I cast over wood and had this really rawhide-like texture. And I realized I could make that paper structural. So then I put it again over something else, and it became this stiff, sort of dried out skin-like thing that I thought was beautiful. The chairs were an accident as well. I don't remember the initial reason why I chose to try this over a chair. It might have been something that was just hanging around. But the chair in and of itself is really valuable to my work, because chairs are those things where they support and conform to your body, but they make your body conform to them, and they become a place for a specific person. I wanted to focus on my own family, so I had to choose a smaller section. And I chose, as a woman, my patriarchal lineage, which was not for reasons you might presume. I fell in love with the history research that I did for palimpsest. I really enjoyed doing that. And I wanted to do it for my own family. And I know a lot about my own family, but I never met my grandfather. And so I knew a lot about my father's family and his aunts and his cousins, but I never met this man, and so he was very mysterious to me. So the research of my family sort of was a guilty pleasure in that I got to learn about this person that I didn't know. What started with me repeatedly saying my family again and again and again led to experimentation and a few adventures in research, and what I produced was 24 chairs. I chose 24 chairs because I limited my scope to 3 generations of my father's family. The paternal line, nobody who married in. And what I found were certain visual and kind of ironic patterns. The first generation was 9 people. It was actually 10, but one of the children died in infancy and was never named. So the original generation, the first generation, is all deceased now, and they're all represented by paper chairs, and there was 9 of them. The second generation, my father's generation, there was 6 children. 3 of them are living, 3 of them are dead. It's that perfect balance. My generation, the third generation, there's also 9, and all of us are living, so we're represented by the wood. The wood has a specific content too. I use reclaimed barn wood, so it has this previous history that it carries with it. But wood also has that lovely quality as a material where it's really warm and kind of fleshy and associated with living. And that was pretty powerful to me. The other patterns I found is that the first person in that first generation was named Manda Remmen. The last person in my generation is named Manda Remmen, and he's my little brother. The first person in that first generation has the same name as the last person, and the last person in my generation is the only one that maintains the name Remmen. I have it, but I won't pass it on to my children. These chairs became my symbol. They symbolized for me a place marker for specific people, and it got to the point that each one of these chairs has a name. It is a specific person, or a place for a specific person. I wanted to create conversation and proximity and narrative using the chairs. And what I found is that no matter what conversation or what story I intended it, but you read it differently. This is Gary and Sherry. They're brother and sister. Sherry died of cancer, so she's the paper chair. Gary was older, so he's on the left. But when I presented this piece as such, people read it differently. And it's one of those things where we see how we know. I don't have a husband and I don't have any children, but I do have a brother, so I see a sibling relationship in this. Other people saw that this was a married couple, that one person had died. Somebody else saw that it was a parent and a child who had been taken, so to speak. And there's all these different relationship things that can be fed into that. The chairs are general. They don't have a specific gender, and they don't really have a specific age. It's just that fine line drawn in the sand. One is living and one is dead. And the proximity between the two of them makes it so the relationship is more intimate and close, but it's not specifically defined. I realized that what I was missing was the site specificity that I had with palimpsest. And so I started taking them out. And what I found is that I shoved 24 chairs in a van and I started driving cross country, and I got to Iowa and I knew the story of the land and I knew the current owner, and it was wild and it was really a beautiful scene, but I had no relationship to this place. So the photographs I got were kind of flat and not that good because I didn't have any of my own voice to put into it. I didn't know it. But I did know Dakota because I'd been there every summer as a child for as long as I could remember. And I knew the stories, and I knew the location of the stories, and I knew where this or that happened. And so when I put the chairs out on the space, arranging them was easy because I knew the stories. And the photographs came out a lot better. When I discovered this stop motion style of video, it was like the element of time exploded for me. And video is the perfect means to incorporate time because it's like you can put so much of it in so many different layers all at once, which is really fabulous. It allowed me to layer and squish time all at once. Because I couldn't very well do my thesis exhibition in South Dakota, I had to build a place where these chairs belonged. And so what I ended up doing was building a house. It has 4 rooms and a central closet. Each room had a different installation of chairs, and I was going for, still along the theme of family, I was going for that sort of hidden, secret family identity, and the fact that with a lot of family dynamics, there's a lot of support, but there's a lot of entanglement too. So everybody gets tied up together and you have the support of your family, but they sometimes hold you back as well. And right in the center of this house was the closet, and I filled it with paper chairs. And the closet is sort of a forgotten place, or a place where you put the stuff to forget, or storage place, you just shove it all in there. And I put the closet as the core, and I decided to highlight it by making it sing.